I do dirty to a guy and took his product and didn't pay him for it.
Mm-hmm.
And he blew my house up.
Whoa.
Yeah, put a pipe bomb right on my steps. And
You weren't in the house, were you?
yeah, oh yeah.
This is Hard Knocks Talks.
What's up, Tim? Welcome to the podcast.
Good morning. Thank you for having me, Daniel. I'm excited to do this. I've never talked about this part of my story, and I'm looking very forward to it.
Well, and I'm, thanks for agreeing to share your story. I know I thought you were someone else when I saw you on Facebook, and I forget, I was trying to remember this morning, you were talking about getting taxed for too many guinea pigs or eating grass. It was something just crazy.
Yeah.
And I have friends who are retired gangsters, right? And I thought it was one of them, I've got lots of friends I've got a few friends from Straight Up and, my friend Chantel, Trap House Testimonies. So, but then when I realized it was Tim from the camp out,
Right.
I was like, whoa, hang on a minute here now. There's more to this story. So, and that's when I reached out to you.
There was definitely a connection at the camp out there. I seeked you out. I wanted to talk to you because I'd heard about you. I've heard about your podcast. I heard you're in recovery. You knew some people that I knew. And I've got to meet a lot of people, but there's a lot more people I want to meet too, because I want to know what you're doing, right? How are you getting through the day without getting loaded, And I like being around positive people, and you came across as a very positive, caring, loving father. And you care about the people around you. And I seen how you operated at the camp out. That was so cool, man. So thank you for the honor and pleasure to meet you. It's cool.
Yeah. And likewise, I posted something on Facebook this morning that it was the pain of addiction taught me everything I needed to know to win in life.
Right.
It was that pain that taught me that joy isn't free. It was that pain that taught me that joy is like the spiritual paycheck that we get for being service to community. So that's what I've learned. That's what addiction taught me. And that's what I try to emulate in the community. So enough about me.
Yeah.
Why don't we focus on you, man? It sounds like you've got a pretty wild story. You were telling me a few things when you were here the other day talking about coming on the show.
Right.
So let's hear it, man. Like, where do you want to start? Was addiction something that you grew up around?
Oh, absolutely. Came from a very dysfunctional family. Both parents were alcoholics, and I think from my earliest memory of being a child was, I think I was around 3, and all I remember is we lived in this duplex, and my mother and father were fighting and screaming, and the neighbor came to come and take me over to her place, and her telling me it's going to be okay. You didn't do anything wrong. And, but, have someone come and take me out of my house, that was like a scary experience, right? So, that's my first memory I can recall that where alcohol impacted my life. A couple years later, we left the city we were living in and moved up north. Our closest neighbor was a mile away. Where we moved to was just a beautiful old turn of the century home. This house sat on a river. You could look out your front window and see waterfalls behind our house. But inside, it was a nightmare. My parents, between the drinking and the fighting, and I had older siblings that were out doing what some teenagers do, right? That's what my childhood looked like. But when I was 5, we had this guy come in. He was doing some work in our yard, and he molested me when I was 5. So once it was all over, I went to my mom and told her what had happened. And man, she was torn. I could tell how upset she was about this. So when she told my father, he turned off. He just looked at me like I was, dirt, right? I don't know if he was embarrassed or he had his own issues, but, the whole tough part of what was that is, they called the police, reported what had happened, and I had to go to court. And I think there was 3 days of trial, and I'd stand up and look at this guy and tell people what he had done to me. And that was hard.
At 5 years old.
At 5 years old, yeah. Did it help anything? No, because my dad just never talked to me the same ever again, right?
Really?
Yeah.
After that was all said and done, life just returned to what you might consider normal?
Yeah, I grew up in that era. There was no talk, no tell, no feel, right?
Yeah.
So, I was never talked about again for 30 years.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That wasn't the only time that had happened. So it happened when I was 5, and then about 9, it happened again.
With someone else?
Someone else.
Yeah.
You know, man that my mom was having an affair with, he had molested me right in front of my mom. And did it change the way I viewed the world? Absolutely. The way I viewed myself? Absolutely.
Yeah.
It just felt like a disposable piece of crap, right?
Mm-hmm.
That people could do what they want to me. And that's pretty hard when your parents aren't there to protect you for that kind of things, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So lots of resentments towards my parents. But I really never had any resentment towards the people that hurt me. A lot of people have the same experiences,
Mm-hmm.
and they hate that person.
Mm-hmm.
And that wasn't my story, right?
Mm.
When I was 7, my brother was 19, and he was more of a father figure at 19 than my dad ever was. So, I mean, we were really, really close. And him and his girlfriend were coming home from church on a Sunday morning and got hit by a kid in a stolen car. And he died right there. And so did his girlfriend. And that really changed things for me. Not only didn't my parents tell me what happened, they didn't know how to tell me. So at the age of 7, they sat me down at the kitchen table and started giving me beers. And my mom just said, "Your brother's dead." I'm like, "What?" And it was almost like I sobered up instantly. I just left the table, walked upstairs, and went to bed. And it just seemed like from that point on, life just wasn't the same. They were just doing the best they could with what they had, right?
Mm-hmm.
My grandfather, he was a gambler, run poker tables. He was a bootlegger, prostituted women. And I think when you come from a family like that, it becomes the next generation's lifestyle, right?
Mm-hmm.
Same thing happened with me. I watched my parents did and started my life out like that.
After that news at 7 years old, then what?
Started acting out, stealing, getting in trouble at school. And I think I was really, really angry at my parents.
For what?
For not telling me, because I didn't get to go to the funeral. I didn't get a chance to say goodbye.
How long after his death did they tell you?
Well, they were gone for about 5 days. At the age of 11, my parents decided to separate. My dad got into recovery. Sobered up when he was 41, and it was probably the happiest day of my childhood. In my house, you didn't know what the hell was going to happen. I can remember one Thanksgiving, like our turkey just getting thrown across the kitchen table, right? And as a kid seeing that, it's like just how it's supposed to be. I never had friends to my house because I never knew what to expect, what was going to happen, whether they were drunk or fighting. Or we had child protection services here back then in Ontario. It was called the Children's Aid Society. And I remember going there and asking them if I could stay there.
Really?
Yeah. And, I told them everything. So at that age, yeah, absolutely, I knew there was something wrong.
Who'd you stay with then when they split?
I went with my mom. She moved to Brantford, Ontario.
How was that?
It was good until she met her first boyfriend.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't start out as violent, but he did become violent.
Yeah.
So he had some violent history. I never saw it until just before he died.
Yeah.
A couple of years earlier. So,
yeah,
and I was miserable. I wanted to leave that family at times too. When they were drinking, it was crazy. Lots of trips to the hospital and lots of crime. My grandfather, he was a bootlegger. He ran poker tables and he prostituted out of women above the house that my grandmother raised their kids.
That was just something that he did on his own. That's a dangerous game to play on your own.
Was there some people that were taxing them for what they were doing? Absolutely. But did I see people like that around? It was always just my grandpa up there. But, to say that any organization in particular, I wouldn't know.
Yeah. So what did life look like then as, it became more of a normal thing that mom and dad were separate and, you had a stepdad and dad's sober now? Like what did your life look like during that period?
A lot of running back and forth between my mom and my dad, because when it was going on with my mom and my stepfather, I go up to stay up north at my dad's place. And also, he really never seemed to have time for me, even at that age. You know, if I want to do something with him, I'd have to go to a meeting or a roundup or, you know, go in the bush and cut trees or whatever for firewood. And he just never seemed like he was available.
Mm-hmm.
And neither did my parents. But then once I got in, you know, into high school, that all changed, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, I met my circle of friends that I fit in with. And then things got harder with my dad because he knew I was using. And so he just kind of pushed AA on me, told me, you know, I remember him sending me to a psychiatrist once. I was like 17. And, you know, and that's when I really started thinking there's something wrong with me. You know, I'm not smashing beer bottles in people's faces. I'm not fighting. I'm not hurting anybody. I'm not doing anything. All I'm trying to do is cope, right?
Yeah.
I started dealing in high school. That's why I dropped out. I got
Okay.
busted at high school for selling. And it was just a common thing, man.
Yeah.
You know, so I got kicked out of school. I remember I came back for a week and then they told me to leave.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, you know, I pushed out, told them different, and I don't have an outlet to my friends now. So I'm alone and isolated.
So you got a job and you moved out?
Yeah.
And then what did that look like?
Pretty much the same things were going on, but it was happening in my house. The quantities that I was buying was getting bigger and more people came.
Yeah.
And that always gave me a feeling of importance that I had something that you needed.
Uh-huh.
When that's all you know,
Mm.
it isn't about community. It's not about service. It's about survival.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it was anyhow, because if I didn't have those things, I didn't know what else to do. I didn't have a job that I wanted, really. But did I care about other people? Did I care about the community? Absolutely not.
Mm.
Self-centered person, right? For me, it was a little different because it was all family members, right? So I guess I got to work up a little quicker than most people.
Mm-hmm.
I sold for years before I ever tried it.
Mm.
And it was a girl that I grew up with that I ran into after I was probably 21 or 22. And she was heavily into her addiction and she knew what she was doing. She knew what she wanted, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that first one I took, I knew right away my life was about to change forever.
Mm.
I lived in a bigger city in Ontario and I used to go up north. I had 3 or 4 cities that I'd stop in.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd work all week, drive up north on a Friday, drop off, and on Sunday I'd stop back and pick up my cash, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I started staying up there an extra day, missing work, not going home. Started pissing people off. And then I started going to other sources, people I didn't know. I do dirty to a guy and took his product and didn't pay him for it.
Mm-hmm.
And he blew my house up.
Whoa.
Yeah, put a pipe bomb right on my steps. And that was a pretty big awakening. I mean, a lot of things before that happened.
I mean, most people don't get their houses blown up.
No, in fact, you know.
You weren't in the house, were you?
Yeah, oh yeah. And the problem was I had 4 or 5 guys that I was dealing with, and I didn't know who did it.
Mm.
So all I did is I packed up and headed up to my dad's place, and I don't think I was there a day or two, and the cops showed up, wanted to know what happened.
Mm-hmm.
And they asked me, who did this? And I said, I don't know. That was probably one time I wasn't lying because I didn't know.
Mm.
And yeah, I was scared, man. I was scared.
Did that occurrence shift your thinking?
You know, I knew I needed to get out of town. You know?
Yes, I knew I needed to fuck off.
Yes, I needed to get myself out of the situation. And, you know, really what happened was my older sister came to me and said, you know, the debt that you had, that thing happened. We went to try to pay it for you. And they said, it's too late.
Wow.
It was a lot of money.
That is scary.
So my sister put me on a plane and flew me out west.
Uh-huh.
And that's how I got here. And it wasn't long after that I seeked out the same type of people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I get this crazy idea that I'm going to take my mom, my girlfriend, and her boyfriend to Cartagena, Colombia for Christmas and New Year's.
Hey, that's what you're.
Yeah, man.
Hell of a son. Let's go.
Let's go.
Yeah.
And, you know, my mom was retired and she started traveling.
Uh-huh.
And she'd been in Venezuela the year before. And she goes, man, I love South America. I go, yeah, I do too. So all the things that I like come from there.
And that was normal to say that to your mom?
Yeah. Was it normal?
For you, it was?
Yeah. Was it normal for most families? I don't think so. I'd hope not. I
Mhm.
don't have those conversations with my kids.
Yeah.
You know, really.
The thought of smoking with my son has never even crossed my mind.
Yeah, it's probably not a great idea, right? So we get down, we do all these cool touristy things and stuff. But then I meet this guy, Francis. And he says, I'm the man. I'm like, yeah, I've heard that phrase before.
Yeah, your opinion might be biased, Francis.
So anyways, I was still there for another week. And I told him what I wanted to do. And he goes, I got family that lives about 2 hours from where you're at in Ontario. I'm like, that's cool, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I told him, I said, I wanted something to take home when I go back. So what do you plan on doing? Put it in my suitcase, whatever, right? I didn't think I needed to tell him. He says, okay. So I broke it all up. I sat there the night before going to the airport. So my mom walks in the middle of this and goes, what are you doing? What does it look like, Mom? She got so mad at me. She goes, you want to go to jail? I really don't know what happened, but I ended up just letting her take all my shit. I said, you can do what you want. And I was mad at her. We fly from Cartagena back to Toronto, get in my car, and I'm driving my mom up to her place. And then I'm going home, right? Get to my mom's place. My mom reaches in her bra, pulls all these balloons that we'd filled up, throws them on the table, reaches down in her pants. Everything that was there was accounted for. My mom was pretty flat-chested when she walked through there. I didn't know what she said. I felt like Dolly Parton, she said, right?
Kind of like that.
So the next phase was to recruit some people to go down. Just started dealing with the guy that I met down in Colombia with his family.
Mm.
And that got scary because they're very deadly people. You had to do whatever you had to do to make sure you had those people's money. And that was scary. These guys were just straight up murderers. Pretty much not too long after that, I had my first child.
Oh, yeah.
And with the girl that introduced me to using my drug of choice, right?
Mm-hmm.
And, she got pregnant and I wanted to continue using and she didn't. So she left.
Mm.
And I think from there, things just started, it's pretty blurry.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's when I really got lost in my addiction,
Mm-hmm.
because I was trying. I wanted to be a parent. I always thought if I became a parent, had a child, became a parent, that I wouldn't use, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I didn't want that for my kids. But what did I do? I used.
Mm-hmm.
And me and my oldest kid's mom, we used together when she was pregnant.
Mm.
And so it made some complications when my daughter was born, and I wasn't involved. I was an absent dad.
Mm-hmm.
My priorities started changing. My attitude started changing. Sitting in my basement by myself with a candle burning, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was a slow process. The last 2-3 years of my active addiction, my world got smaller. I moved around a lot. I just wasn't capable of doing things on the level that I was before. Yeah, and, I get out west and I meet a girl there, and she's a fair amount younger than I am, and she got pregnant. And at that point, I was thinking, I had a daughter. That didn't stop me from using. I thought, if I had my first son, that'll be it. I won't use. I'll get a normal life. I'll get a job. And
So you wanted to change.
Absolutely. I never wanted this life. I sold everything I had left, and I was just done. And about a month later, we go in the hospital, and everything goes well. Go through the delivery, everything's good. My parents are there. They're talking. I'm like, the girl supposedly I'm in love with, her parents are here. And they're all staying at my house. So I do what good fathers do. They go to the bar and hand out cigars saying I had a boy on them. And I didn't make it back to the hospital for 4 days.
Oh, man.
My mom left and said goodbye. My dad stuck around. Her parents left. They're at my house and I'm supposed to be taking care of them, right? There was a lot of guilt and shame around that, right? Because I was trying, but I just couldn't pull it off.
Yeah.
Yeah. So about a month later, my son's a month old. We're kind of doing okay, right? Just at the end of that relationship, he'd asked me if I was still using him. Come in, I was stayed out at the bar till close, and I remember trying to be quiet, opening the door and going to the house, and all I see is this flash. I put my hand up, You can still see the scars on my finger there. The kid's mom just had a frying pan. She loved me with it. Came home a few days later. Her mom and dad drove out, brought her to Moose Jaw with my son.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to lose my mind. So the only way I knew how to deal with that is to get loaded. And then I called an agency to get in to see a counselor. Went and talked to this guy, and I talked to another doctor, and they both suggested that I go to Narcotics Anonymous meeting. I remember walking in this place, and it's big. There's probably like 80 people in there, right? And I'm like, no clue what to expect. So I sit down, just mind my own business, shaking like a leaf. And I sat in it for about 10 minutes, left. Kind of reminded me of the meetings that I went to with my dad. But they were talking about drugs and addiction. And some people were talking about getting their lives back, getting their families back, getting their kids back.
Did you believe them?
I thought they're all doing it for the court, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't believe anything. So my son's about a month old now. They're in Moose Jaw. I'm in Kelowna. And I don't know what to do. So I do the one thing I know how to do. Pick up where I left off, right?
Mm-hmm.
Start dealing again, start using again. And then I started talking to my kid's mom, and she suggested that I go out to Moose Jaw because there was no drug addicts like me out there.
I know there is.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I got to know them as soon as when I got there, right?
Yeah.
And so, I packed up everything and I moved to Moose Jaw. So we get a house with a little white picket fence out front, and New Year's I go out and went to New Year's Eve party, and the party she was at was only a few doors down from where our house was. So I leave the party about 1 in the morning that I was at and went to where she was, and I walk in and she's sitting in some guy's lap, laughing and carrying on. And I'm like, my head explodes. We got in a physical altercation, and I trashed my house. And in the morning, I woke up to, a couple large goons banging on my door and took me to jail. I've only been in Saskatchewan and Moose Jaw for 2 weeks, and I don't even know who to call. So the only person I could think of to call was my dad. And the guy got on a plane and flew out here the next day, and that's where it starts. To get out, released, I had to sign a bunch of conditions. One of them was that I go to A, one is I go to NA, anger management, couldn't hang out with people with criminal record. I was 27 years old. I had a 9 o'clock curfew. And I hadn't had a 9 o'clock curfew since I was about 8. So that was pretty humbling. Couldn't go in licensed establishments. And I had to attend one AA meeting and one NA meeting.
A week?
So when they said AA, the first person I think of is my dad, right? And I don't know why, but I started thinking about the meetings I went to. And you know what? There was never any violence there. There was nobody fighting there. And for some reason, I had this feeling of calmness, knowing that's where I needed to be, right? So he came, he stayed for a while, went to a couple meetings, and a lot of the stuff that I was doing was in Regina. And I lived in Moose Jaw. I don't know if the judge did this intentionally, but I had a radius that I could leave the city. He gave me a 50-kilometer radius that I could leave the city. Regina's 63 kilometers away. And I'm like,
he should have made it 60.
Yeah, just so you could see the outer limits of the city, right?
Yeah.
I had a probation officer, and once he started seeing that I was doing things, some of those conditions got dropped. But one that was a huge one is I couldn't see my kids or my ex. No communication for 6 months, so I could prove that I was being clean. But through that whole time, it was like, man, I was meeting new people that weren't using, right? But the cool thing was my dad was with me for the first couple of weeks of that, right? And we really bonded like a father and son should. Fortunately, really late in life, but that was cool. And for, I think like 25 more years after that, we had a great father-son relationship, right? And it's because of recovery.
What's your clean date?
My clean date now is March 9th, 2007.
Let's take a quick break.
Yeah.
Read off today's sponsors, then we'll start talking about recovery.
Okay.
The Advancing Interprofessional Management of Substance Use Disorders in Saskatchewan program, or AIMS-SK, is offered through the College of Medicine at the University of Saskatchewan and is designed to deepen healthcare professionals' understanding of substance use to improve health outcomes for individuals with substance use disorders. This program consists of 3 modules, including the foundations of harm reduction in substance use disorder, opioid use disorder, and alcohol use disorder. If you are a healthcare professional in Saskatchewan and wish to reduce stigma and better serve those with substance use disorder, look for the AIMS-SK link in the description below. EHN Canada is Canada's leading provider of mental health and addiction services, providing evidence-based and medically assisted care with 1-year wraparound services for those suffering with substance use disorder. To learn more, find their link in the show notes below. Métis Nation Saskatchewan has announced its path for the pursuit of self-government. As an MNS citizen, I am proud to see my government fight to protect my rights. This is our moment. To learn more about our treaty and our path to self-government, go to ourmoment.ca. Wellness News, Choice for Healthy Living, is a local resource that works to connect people to health and wellness-related products, services, and expert advice from industry professionals locally, allowing us to connect and engage. Check out wellnessnews.ca or skwellnesshub.ca today to learn more. If you'd like to see our content uncensored, we are now offering channel memberships. There is a lot we can't show you without getting restricted. So if you want the full conversations, or to check out our new merch, or if you want to show us some love and buy us a coffee, all of those links are also in the show notes below. Okay, so it sounds to me like you're building a life in recovery at this point. Going to meetings, maybe laughing once in a while, maybe building some relationships. Did you buy into the program right away? Like, what did that look like?
I don't know if I bought into the program. I mean, I was court ordered to be there, so it wasn't a choice.
Mm-hmm.
Could have been a choice. I could have chose not to go and sit in cells, but my just wanting to get my relationships back and my kids in my life.
So you didn't want to stop using.
No.
You just wanted your friends to be back in your life, and your son and your kids.
Wanted all the things that I'd lost.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to get through that 6 months, and then I get to see my son. So they're asking for supervised visits. My son's mom's in the courtroom with my ex, and she stands up and says, "I will do the supervised visits with my grandson." Her daughter jumped up and said, "He's a drug addict asshole." And the judge just told her to sit down. That was the first time I'd felt validated in such a long time. There was supposed to be 10 supervised visits. I had 1 supervised visit with her mom and my son. She goes back to the court the next day after that visit, tells him he doesn't need to be supervised with his son. He's a good dad. All the rewards that came in that 6 months, it's unbelievable. I could do things without getting high. And I never ever thought that was imaginable, right? And then once I got to start visiting with my son alone, what a beautiful feeling, man. People wanted to start being around me. At the end of my using, nobody wanted to be around me. I didn't even want to be around me, right? I can remember walking down the stairs of St. Michael's Church for the first time, for my first meeting. And as I'm getting closer, I can hear people talking. I can hear people laughing.
Those old Dr. Pepper drinking old timers.
Back then you could smoke. And as I'm walking into the room,
Yeah.
everybody's got an ashtray or a can in front of them. And like, where am I, Toto?
Yeah.
And I had my drug of choice in my pocket when I went into my very first meeting because I wasn't sure if I could get through an hour, right? I didn't use that day. And I heard stories that were way worse than mine, man. Like, I'm just going like, do I really belong here?
Yeah.
I think what I heard was life gets better.
What did your first shares sound like?
I shared about when I first got into drugs, it was bikers. And then as I got older, it was organized crime. And then when I come out to Vancouver, I'm hanging out with Chinese gangs, and I don't fit in, man, because I don't look like them. I don't sound like them. They would supply you with whatever was available, but you didn't get to go hang out with them, or it was just like business. And they always say, if you don't come back, I cut your head off.
Wow, that's harsh.
Yeah.
We just skip right to that, hey?
Yeah. So I have this court order, and it's a year.
Yeah.
So for long as if I stay clean, sober, and out of trouble for a year, my charges will be expunged, right? And I did that. So I got a year in. I go to my celebration. I'm working, I'm living with a girl that I don't like, and I get this idea I'm going to buy a house. So I buy a house, and I go into the bank with my girlfriend that I'm living with to buy this house, and he says, "You need to do this on your own, man." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" I was going to buy a house with her, and we're going to start a life, even though I don't like her. She's kind of fitting into my lifestyle, right? Because she's in the program. So he says, "Listen, she has bad credit," and everything was fine. Everything's done. We got the house. We move in, and you can tell she's pissed, right? This is your house, and everything starts going south. So after 2 months, she just moved out. She left, and I went on a bender for a couple of days. I was thinking about selling my house and moving back east.
So you dried out again, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I had another relationship. I moved a girl in. She probably spent that night, moved in the next day, that quick type stuff, right? And this relationship falls apart. I'm like, what's wrong with everybody?
Okay.
So I go to work and I say, I need some time off. I got to do something. And they go, "Yeah, we've noticed that." So they helped me get in treatment. And I went to a native treatment center for 35 days. And it was the first time in my life that I took that amount of time out for myself. And it wasn't because I didn't know how to stop doing drugs. Drugs wasn't the issue. And at the end, the drugs weren't helping anymore anyhow. So I go to this treatment center for 35 days. I'm in it. You live with them. You eat with them. You breathe with them. You do sweats with them. I got really close with the director, a female white lady. Only white person I could talk to in there. And immediately there was some kind of connection, right? So when I get out, she suggests to me, "You should move to PA and take the chemical dependency worker program." So yeah, I made a choice to move to PA, finish my course in 2 years. You had to do a genealogram where you listed all your family members and what they did, and how these people affected your life and that. And write a story about it. And when I look back, it's like my family is nothing but criminals, right?
Yeah.
And it's the first time I ever actually looked at my family like that, because I would always just look at, my dad or my mom or my brother or my sister, and everybody was in the trade. And when I looked at it and seen how far it went back, it was like, holy man.
You never zoomed out before.
Yeah. So here's some answers for why the way I was, right? And why I'm the way I am. Because no deep connections with people, I had attachment disorder, which, as soon as when I got involved with anybody, I would get attached to them and I'd be afraid to lose them. So I'd do anything I could to keep them in my life, right? At my own expense. And I paid dearly for that, right? Yeah. So I spent a couple of years. I meet this girl, and we start living together right away, and finished my course. And I worked at the Maxi Center for a while, and I worked at the CTR for a while in PA while I was going to school. So I already had some experience in the field. So first job that comes up is in Flin Flon,
Manitoba.
Yeah. So I got my lady with me. I got my new daughter with me. It was so humbling to be able to work in that field. I started in June or July, and my director goes to Hawaii for 6 weeks every year. So I'm there by myself for 6 weeks. I don't have a clue what I'm doing, right? It's the first job. She didn't spend a lot of time training me. She had some work experience, but there's a lot more to just talking to people and helping people. There's so much stuff behind it. And trying to do her role and trying to do my role. And I'm making like $15 an hour to do this. So I just, I got to find a new way to make money. What do I know how to do? And I did that. And I'm going to my house with my kids and stuff there, right? I made the mistake of using my work email address to order some seats from Vancouver, right? And so that night they had a board meeting, and I forgot my mail on the desk. So I come in back in the office around 7 o'clock at night, and the board's all gathered in the boardroom, and I knew right away something was up, right? Calls me in after the board meeting and handed me my notice. So we just packed up and went back. And I just started doing odd jobs. And then that's when, and I'm still staying clean through all this, man. I'm a train wreck, man. I'm probably one of the most toxic people you could be around at that point in my recovery.
Did you keep growing through all that?
Oh, hell yeah, man. Yeah. Bigger and larger. And got connected with these guys, and we decided we're going to open up a hydroponic shop. It's around 2005, 2006. They talked to their lawyer. I talked to my lawyer, and their lawyer tells them, you don't want to get in business with this guy. He's got bad credit. So they ended up bailing on me. And my 40th birthday comes up, March 9th was my clean date. And at 10 years, my life is so unmanageable. And I don't want to be with my partner anymore. I just want to go act out. And I had these guys that had been coming to the shop for a year, just heard that it was my 40th birthday, and happy birthday, Tim, and gave me my drug of choice on my birthday. And I didn't think twice about it. And that was on a Friday night. Sunday night, I end up in this hotel, right? And I'm all geeked out and everything. And I know I got to go to work on Monday. So I called home. I said, can I come home? And all she said to me is, are you going to do that again? I said, no. And I meant it. It took 5 more years before I got involved in recovery again. Didn't have a sponsor. Wasn't going to meetings. Just all stuck in my head and driving myself crazy, right? So 2012, I take this job at a mill, and like in 4 months, I'm about ready to crawl up in the sniper tower and shoot everybody in the place because I'm so miserable. I'm not sleeping because I'm doing night shifts, and I just quit with no plan, no nothing. We're here. 2013, I get my Class 1 driver's license. So I get working for this company, and there's this guy, Donnie, who worked there. And for a year, we went for coffee and lunches and got to know each other, and came over. He was helping me change some tires on the truck, and I'm trying to torque on him to get him off. And I'm like, grabbed a big snipe, and I threw it across the room at the table. I was so pissed off. And this Donnie guy just looked at me and goes, when are you ever going to go back to a meeting? And we had never talked about 12-step programs. We never talked about recovery. I had no idea they had 15 years in a program. So that was on a Tuesday. That Friday, I went to my first NA meeting again in like 10 years. And it was so cool. It was like coming home, man. I shared, and I just poured it out. Usually,
what did that share sound like?
A very broken person. I was all over the place. I was crying. There was just so much relief that I managed to get back here without dying. That whole hour went by. I didn't want the meeting to be over. So then we go out for fellowship after, and it's like, man, I'm starting to make connections. I'm so grateful for Donnie, man. Like, if it hadn't been for him, who knows? Who knows what would have happened, right? So in 2017, I go to a convention in Edmonton, and I meet Margaret. I get to meet her husband, Chad B. He's got leather vest on, rides a Harley. He's my kind of people, right?
Yeah.
And it's 2017, 3 or 4 years later. So we're up at our cabin, and usually when it's my 2 weeks up there, there's no drinking there. And I said, well, why don't we invite your mom and dad? And she goes, that's a bad idea. You know how you are around him when he's drinking. My father-in-law invites about a bunch of his drinking and fishing buddies. And he starts drinking and getting belligerent. It's me in front of everyone else, right? And so I threatened to knock him out. I said, if you say one more word, I'm going to put my fist through your face. And here I am in recovery, supposed to be living this whole spiritual life and everything, right? My wife was really pissed off. They got off and left. I mean, could have I just walked away and ignored it? Yeah, absolutely, I could have. The only thing I could think of was to call Margaret. So I call her. I said, can I talk to your husband? And she said, absolutely. He's been waiting for you to call. Like, what?
This is
4
years
later, man. Man, it's like, dude, I need to work some steps. My life's unmanageable, man. And he said, yeah, I'll work with you. So next week we get our flat books out, and we start on step 1. And man, the rest is history. This year we celebrate 4 years. This summer coming up, it'll be 4 years that he's my guy, man.
You've been in recovery.
Yeah.
4 years.
Yeah.
Sober longer than that.
2017 was like such a huge turning point. I'm going to meetings, I'm staying clean. I got a relationship with my in-laws. I got a relationship with my kids. I got a relationship with my partner. We've had another son since then, who was 2, and she was pregnant again. And
You know how that happens, right?
that's why I had to do some step work. I had to figure it out, right? I'm with this girl for like 17 years then, right? 2017, she's out at the cabin. I'm working, and she's holding our 2-year-old, and she kind of wobbles and falls, and she drops Brian, and my daughter's close enough to grab her, and nobody knew what happened, and she went back. I think she went in to lie down or something because she felt exhausted, and she started having seizures. You know, I'm at Battle Lake, she's at Turtle Lake, and she calls me and says, they have to take me to North Battleford to the hospital. So I'm like, what's going on? She goes, I have no clue. I'm like, do you want me to go? And she goes, I don't think it's anything. Just I'll call you after to do the imaging, right? So we go and we find out she has a brain tumor. So first thing I'm thinking is I'm going to lose my partner. Everything's all together now. And, now I'm pissed off at God because why are you doing this to me now? These are the best years of my life. And you're going to take my partner away from me, because that's the first thing I think is she's going to die. And I got a 2-year-old and a 6-month-old baby. So I take off on my bike for a few days, and I went to every possible place I think I could go to use. And it had been a long time. I go to a couple biker rallies, and I know lots of people in that community. And it's like, dude, what are you doing here, man? This isn't your thing. And everybody knows I'm in recovery, right? And I see my drug of choice, and there's bottles everywhere. And my one buddy's just loaded out of his head. He says, go home, man. And I did. And I just dove right into taking care of my wife and my kids and my home. And for 5 years, she was my full focus. She was everything. And we were having a relationship like I always wanted, right? So she can't work for 18 months. So I'm pretty much taking care of everything. And we just get this idea we're going to move to Saskatoon. And I was ready. I was ready. And probably, ever since I threatened to punch up my father-in-law, I was ready to move, right? But something didn't seem right. It just seemed weird. Like, as soon as when we moved, it seemed like there was a disconnect between me and my partner, right? I took a trip out to Edmonton to see my sponsor, and I spent a couple of weeks with him. And I come back, and I'm sitting talking with my kid's mom, and she's got this look on her face, and I'm not sure what's going on, right? I'm like, so I'm just straight out like, what's going on, Jerry? And she says, I'm not happy. And I thought about it, and I went, you know what? Neither am I. And we just at that time made the decision to split. We never put each other down or anything. She just says, I don't need you to take care of me anymore.
Was that a relief?
It was, man. But I didn't know what else to do, right? So we lived together for a year. We got a big house. I live downstairs. She lives upstairs. And we raised our kids together for a year, but we're not together. And we respect each other for a year. We don't date anyone. And it was so cool. Like, we had that friendship back, and we have that friendship today. She moved out July of this year. I had one relationship, like a learning experience that I needed to have. This is now I got a bunch of clean time, a bunch of years of recovery, and I'm going through a divorce, and I get connected with this fellowship here, man. And I've never felt like I've had a family like I have now. I've gone through some things in the last 2.5 years that any other time in my life, I would have got loaded.
Through this whole story, you did not mention spirituality. Let's talk a little bit about that. Tell us a little bit about your experience with the steps. Where did the rubber hit the road for you? Did you believe that there was something out there bigger than you that wanted to guide you?
No, because I lived in a lot of, I think when you hear somebody that spends 5 years clean, not going to meetings, when I'm not involved, I'm disconnected, not living a spiritual program.
Like coming into that spiritual experience, you didn't grow up around anything that had any semblance of spirituality, as far as I can tell.
No.
So, I mean, coming into that, what did that feel like, coming into that, coming to understand that you needed to have a relationship with something bigger than yourself?
I don't think I really got that until I got my sponsor that I have today. He always showed up for me. And I started to believe that, what, it was my higher power that put him in my life. Like, I've been around for like a couple decades before I met him and more. And, I never did catch that spiritual part of things. So I mentioned that I started my steps with Chad. So we started step 1, and it just felt right. What a beautiful experience. I got an opportunity in step 5 to talk about it's like the patterns in my life and the things that, like how I operate. And some of the things I looked at I didn't like, and I knew I needed to make some changes. So I get into this, and my I'm always looking for the shortest way to do things, right? The easier way. And there was none. I thought we had to do 5 questions and then that step 6 and, kind of span on. And then my sponsor sends me this list of 53 character defects. I got them all, man. And I've been working at it for a while now. And am I done? No. But we keep connecting, we keep talking about it, and he doesn't push me. And I like that. These are the things that are going to set you free, man. Looking at these and just making a decision to change things, right? And I think that's, for me, that works. I don't know how it works for other people, but when I'm allowed the time to do the things that I need to do in a timely manner that I think I need to do it, I get results. But if I get pushed into things, I retaliate, right? I've never known how not to have a female in my life. That was always the picture I had in my head, right? And I never lived, in solitude or being single. So, I'm working through these things where, I'm angry, I'm pissed off. So I just get connected, right? I get right into going to meetings, a lot of meetings, and sharing about it. And I'm certain everybody was getting sick to hearing how hard Tim's life was with the separation. I meet this girl. I met her at an Edmonton convention, found out she was from here. And we start hanging out, and she becomes such a support for me. Like, I just love this person. And it was the first time in my life I'd ever had a friendship with a female that I didn't want to bed down, right? And we never crossed that line. That's what always ruined things for me, because I sleep with them, then I connect, and like that attachment thing going on, right? And she'd listen to me whine for hours. Man, I'd cry and carry on, and I'd talk about the same shit over and over again. Then I realized that, as long as I keep talking about this stuff and getting it out, eventually it's going to lose all its power, right? And it did. And I'm completely off sex for a year and a half, right? And that was always one of my big hang-ups. So then I meet this girl, and we hit it off, and so it becomes my first relationship outside of my marriage. And some of the things I started falling back into some of my old behaviors and stuff. And we went through things really fast, right? Because we made this connection really quick. And I suggest we move in together, right? Because I don't know what I'm doing, and I'm scared. And, I get this big house, and I'm scared to live by myself, right? I'm raising 2 kids by myself. I'm on my own. I don't know how to do this. I need a woman. And all that old shit comes right back, man. But no drugs, which is beautiful. But I don't think I took enough time to get to know myself, right? So it ended badly. And today, being single, living a life of solitude, man, it's such a beautiful thing, man. I can have anybody in my life that I want. I can go do anything I want. I was not ready. Am I today? No.
So what if there's someone out there listening that is where you were, wanting to make a change but don't know how? What would you say to them?
Get involved. Get in the middle of whatever you think will work for you and stick with it. That's what I've always heard. Get in the middle. You won't fall off. I got into, 25 years ago, I got into Buddhism. It helped me out a lot. 25 years later, I'm involved again. I know it works for me. I know I did 8 years of counseling, same counselor, 8 years. That changed so much. It changed my thinking, right? I'm sure a lot of it I could have got through working the steps, but that wasn't my journey. Before anything can really change, you got to put the dope down. And it's hard, man. It is hard getting clean. Like when I cleaned up, it wasn't cool to be clean and sober. Today it is. Like there's so much stuff out there about being sober. There's so many different agencies available. Tap into any of the resources you can find. We have Google, man. It's all at your fingertips now. It's not like you have to go looking for it, right? It's right there at your fingertips. Make calls till someone calls you back, right?
Tim, thanks so much for joining me today. Thank you so much for being willing to share your story, your journey with our community. Surely it will save at least one life. So thank you for being here today. And that's it. Take care, my friend.
Thank you for the privilege and the honor, man.
Say, this is Hard Knocks Talks.